Jake Harrison stepped off the metal ramp of the transport ship. His boots made soft sounds on the strange purple ground of Nexus Prime. The air tasted different here, like metal and flowers mixed together. He carried a simple black briefcase in his right hand and wore his best blue suit. It was the same suit he had worn to his wedding 5 years ago. Around him, the spaceport buzzed with activity. Creatures he had only seen in pictures walked, floated, and slithered past him. A tall being made of what looked like living crystal clicked by on thin legs. Another creature that seemed to be made of green gas drifted overhead. Jake tried not to stare, but it was hard. 3 months ago, he had been a regular diplomat working in Washington. Now he was humanity's first ambassador to an alien council. The discovery had happened by accident. Captain Lisa Brooks had been testing Earth's newest deep space probe near Jupiter, when strange lights appeared around the planet's moons. The lights turned out to be a ship belonging to the Zephyrians, a race of blue-skinned traders who looked almost human, except for their large black eyes and thin bodies. The first meeting had been awkward. Lisa spoke English while the aliens spoke in musical tones that sounded like whale songs, but they had translation machines, small silver devices that turned their music into words humans could understand. The Zephyrian captain, whose name sounded like wind chimes, had been excited to meet a new species. "You are young but promising," the captain had said through the translator. "Your kind should meet the council." The council was a group of alien species that worked together to keep peace in the galaxy. They had rules about trade, war, and helping new species that reached the stars. The Zephyrians thought humans were ready to join, even though Earth had barely figured out how to travel between planets. Dr. Amy Foster walked beside Jake as they entered the main building of the council complex. She was Earth's top expert on alien life, though until 3 months ago she had studied creatures from Earth's deepest oceans. Now she was trying to understand beings from distant stars. The building was huge, with walls that seemed to stretch up forever. Inside, the air was warm and humid. Different sections had different types of air for different species. Jake and Amy wore small breathing devices, just in case. A floating robot approached them. It was round and silver, with 3 blue lights that blinked as it spoke in perfect English. "Welcome, humans from Sol 3. I am Unit 247. I will guide you to your registration." Sol 3 was what the aliens called Earth. Jake thought it sounded cold and official, nothing like the warm blue world where he had grown up. They followed the robot through long hallways filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others on 4 or 6 or 8. Some had no legs at all. A few looked so strange that Jake could not figure out which end was the head. The robot led them to a large room with a curved desk. Behind the desk sat a creature that looked like a giant praying mantis but with purple skin and 4 arms. Its large compound eyes focused on the humans as they approached. "I am Secretary Veltar of the Omnian Collective," the creature said. Its voice was dry and clicking, like autumn leaves. "You are here for species registration." Amy pulled out a small device that contained all of Earth's information: videos of human cities, samples of human art and music, maps of Earth's oceans and continents, and genetic data about human biology. Everything the council needed to understand what humans were like. Veltar took the device with one of its thin arms and plugged it into a machine on the desk. Lights flashed as the information transferred. The alien's large eyes moved back and forth as it read the data. "Interesting," Veltar said. "Your species shows rapid development. You went from basic tools to space travel very quickly." Jake felt proud. Humans had always been good at solving problems and building new things. "Your homeworld has unusual diversity," Veltar continued. "Many different environments and life forms. This is rare." Amy smiled. She'd spent years studying life in Earth's oceans and knew how special her planet was. "We will classify you as Category 7, Veltar announced. "Technologically developing, militarily insignificant, culturally curious. Your embassy will be in Sector 12. You will receive basic translation equipment and integration materials." The B, words militarily insignificant, stung a little, but Jake knew they were probably true. Humans had nuclear weapons and fighter jets, but compared to aliens who could travel between stars, Earth's military was like stone axes. They were given small rooms in a building that looked like a metal tree. Their windows faced a park where alien children played games that involved floating balls of light. Jake watched them for hours, amazed at how normal it all seemed despite being so strange. Dr. Amy Foster spent her first week setting up a small laboratory. The council had given her space to study alien biology, and several species had volunteered to share samples of their genetic material. She was particularly excited about a species of living crystals that could grow and reproduce like plants. Jake spent his time meeting other ambassadors. Most were friendly, though some seemed bored by the arrival of another young species. The galaxy was full of civilizations, and new ones joined the council every few years. But there were a few meetings that felt different. Ambassador Zach Thole of the Void Watchers stared at Jake with large silver eyes that seemed to see too much. The creature looked like a tall, thin human covered in dark gray skin, but its eyes were ancient and knowing. "Your moon," Zach Thole said during their first meeting. "It is unusually large for your planet's size. Do your scientists have theories about how it formed?" The question seemed strange, but Jake answered honestly. "Some think a large object hit Earth long ago and the pieces formed the moon. Others think it was captured from space." Zach Thole nodded slowly but did not explain why the question mattered. As their first month on Nexus Prime ended, Jake and Amy began to feel at home. The work was interesting, the other species were mostly friendly, and humanity was slowly finding its place in the galaxy. Neither of them noticed the small changes happening around them. Security cameras that had not been there before, guards who followed at a distance, computer systems that scanned them more carefully each day. In the deep archives of the council, complex ancient computers were working through the night, comparing human genetic data to files that had been sealed for 50,000 years. Deep in those restricted databases, warning lights began to blink red for the first time since the Great Silence. Something about the humans was wrong. Or perhaps something about them was exactly right in a way that would change everything. Archivist Kethron had worked in the council archives for 200 years. Her species, the Vorthak, lived for 1,000 years and were known for their perfect memory and attention to detail. She had blue-gray skin, 6 arms, and eyes that could see patterns others missed. Her job was to research new species and make sure all their information was properly stored. The human files should have been simple. New species always had basic data, where they came from, what they looked like, how their society worked. But something about the human files bothered her. She could not figure out what it was. She sat in her office deep underground, surrounded by screens showing data about Earth and its people. The stellar data about their sun looked normal. The planet's information seemed typical for a world with life. But when she cross-referenced the star's position with historical maps, something felt wrong. The location was not in any old star charts, but the light signature from their sun seemed familiar. It reminded her of something she had seen before, but she could not remember where. Dr. Ben Cooper had been busy sharing human culture with interested council members. He was a history teacher from California who had volunteered for the mission because he loved telling stories about human civilization. The aliens were fascinated by human myths and legends. In a large meeting room, Ben stood before 20 different species, showing them pictures and videos on a large screen. Today he was talking about human creation stories. Many human cultures have stories about great floods, Ben explained. The water covered the whole world and only a few people survived. A creature that looked like a walking tree raised one of its branch arms. Our species also has flood stories. This is common among young worlds. Ben nodded. Humans also have stories about visitors from the stars. Ancient texts describe beings who came from the sky and taught humans about farming, writing, and mathematics. Several aliens in the audience shifted uncomfortably. The walking tree's leaves rustled nervously. These are just myths, of course, Ben continued. But it's interesting how many human cultures have similar stories about sky gods or star teachers. After the presentation, Ben was approached by Counselor Thess, a member of the Reptilian Dominion. Thess looked like a large lizard that walked on 2 legs, with intelligent yellow eyes and small, sharp teeth. Dr. Cooper, Thys said in a voice like rustling paper, I am curious about human genetic diversity. Your species seems to have many different appearances despite coming from one world. Ben was happy to explain. Humans evolved in Africa and then spread across Earth. As they moved to different environments, they adapted. People in sunny places developed darker skin for protection. People in cold places developed different body shapes to stay warm. And you have gaps in your fossil record? Thys asked. Yes, some periods where we don't have many human bones or artifacts. Scientists think this is because preservation conditions were poor, or because human populations were very small during those times. Thys nodded thoughtfully but did not explain why these details mattered. Meanwhile, Jake Harrison was learning about galactic politics. He met with trade representatives, cultural exchange coordinators, and military liaisons from dozens of species. Most meetings were routine, but some left him feeling confused. Ambassador Zakthul requested another private meeting. They sat in a small room with walls that seemed to absorb sound. Zakthul's large silver eyes studied Jake as if looking for something hidden. Your people have legends about the moon's creation, Zakthul said. Tell me about these stories. Jake thought it was an odd question, but he answered. Some Native American tribes say the moon was brought to Earth by spirits. Other cultures say it was once part of Earth but broke away. Modern science thinks a large object hit Earth billions of years ago, and the debris formed the moon. And before this impact, Earth had no moon. That's what scientists believe. The impact would have been huge, probably melting most of Earth's surface. Zakthul was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, do humans have any racial memories of this time? Dreams or stories passed down from the very beginning? Jake frowned. Humans weren't around when the moon formed. That happened billions of years before humans evolved. Of course, Zakthul said. But his tone suggested he was thinking about something else entirely. Deep in the council archives, Kethran was working late again. She had been comparing human genetic data to the standard biological databases, looking for similar species or evolutionary patterns. Most new species had genetic markers that showed their evolutionary path and relationships to other life forms. Human genetics were strange. They had markers that suggested rapid evolution, much faster than normal. Some sequences looked like they had been deliberately modified, but that was impossible. No species could change their own genetics until they were very advanced, and humans were still new to space travel. She ran the data through older databases, going back further in galactic history. Most of the ancient files were public records, but some were restricted. She did not have permission to access the oldest archives, the ones from before the Great Silence. The Great Silence was a period 50,000 years ago when the most advanced species in the galaxy, called the Forerunners, had simply vanished. No one knew what happened to them. They left behind some technology and many questions, but no answers about where they went or why. Kethran's searches kept hitting restricted files related to that time period. Every time she tried to access information about genetic patterns from the Forerunner era, her computer would display a message. Access denied. Council Security Level 9 required. She had never needed Level 9 security before. Most archivists worked with Level 3 or 4 clearance. Level 9 was for High Council members and intelligence chiefs. Curious and frustrated, Kethran decided to try a different approach. Instead of searching for genetic data, she looked up stellar cartography from the Forerunner period. These files were older and might have lower security levels. She found what she was looking for in a dusty database that cataloged star positions from 60,000 years ago. The stellar map showed the galaxy as it was during the height of Forerunner civilization. There, in the section of space where humans' home system was located, she found a star marked with special symbols. The database was in an ancient language that took her translation software several minutes to decode. The symbols meant protected system. Project Sanctuary, Genetic Repository, Authorized Personnel Only. Kethran stared at the screen. The star was Earth's sun. 60,000 years ago, during the time of the Forerunners, the human solar system had been marked as some kind of special project. She tried to access more information about project, sanctuary, but those files were sealed with the highest security levels. However, she did find one more piece of information in the public astronomical records. The star that would later be called Sol had experienced unusual quantum fluctuations during the final years of Forerunner civilization. These fluctuations were consistent with advanced genetic engineering projects, the kind that could modify life on a planetary scale. Kethron sat back in her chair, her 6 arms trembling slightly. If her research was correct, humans were not just another evolving species. They were connected to the Forerunners, the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. She began writing a report, carefully documenting her findings. As she worked, automated systems in the deepest parts of the archive network began responding to her searches. Ancient security protocols that had been dormant for millennia started to activate. Somewhere in the council complex, warning lights began flashing in rooms that had been dark for 50,000 years. Computer systems that most people had forgotten started running analysis programs designed by the Forerunners themselves. The humans walking through the halls of Nexus Prime had no idea that their presence was awakening technologies that had been sleeping since before their species existed. Ancient machines were beginning to recognize patterns in human DNA that matched templates stored in the deepest, most secure databases in the galaxy. Dr. Amy Foster noticed that her laboratory had been upgraded overnight. New scanning equipment had appeared, more sophisticated than anything she had seen before. When she asked about it, the maintenance robot said it was a routine security enhancement. Ben Cooper found that more species were attending his cultural presentations, including some very old and serious-looking delegates who had never shown interest in new species before. They asked detailed questions about human mythology and seemed particularly interested in stories about ancient teachers and sky gods. Jake Harrison realized that his movements around the complex were being tracked more carefully. Security escorts appeared whenever he left the embassy, always polite but always present. When he asked about it, officials said it was standard protocol for new species during their integration period. None of them knew that deep in the archives, Kethron was compiling a report that would change everything. Her research was revealing connections between humanity and the galaxy's greatest mystery. Links that had been hidden for longer than human civilization had existed. As she worked through the night, ancient systems continued to wake up throughout the council complex. Soon, the secret that had been buried for 50,000 years would be impossible to hide. Dr. Amy Foster submitted her weekly biological report to the council's health department. It was routine paperwork that all new species had to complete. The report included genetic samples from the 3 humans on Nexus Prime, basic medical data, and biological compatibility information for long-term residents on alien worlds. She handed the data chip to a small floating robot and thought nothing more about it. Amy was more interested in her new research on crystalline life forms and the fascinating bacteria she had discovered in the council's biolaboratories. The report traveled through normal council channels until it reached Dr. Velshan of the Healers Consortium. Velshan looked like a tall, graceful bird with silver feathers and large golden eyes. Her species was known throughout the galaxy for their medical knowledge and genetic expertise. Velshan ran the human genetic data through standard analysis programs. She expected to see typical patterns from a young species, simple genetic markers, basic evolutionary development, maybe some interesting adaptations from their homeworld. What she found instead made her drop the data tablet. The human genetic code contained sequences that should not exist. Hidden deep within their DNA were quantum-encoded patterns that she had only seen once before, in the most restricted medical archives. These patterns were not natural evolution. They were artificial modifications that could only be created by the most advanced genetic technology. Velshan checked her equipment 3 times, thinking there must be an error. The results were the same. Human DNA contained Forerunner genetic markers. With shaking hands, she placed an emergency call to High Counselor Jethivar. The call was marked with the highest priority codes, the kind reserved for galactic threats or major discoveries. High Counselor, Velshan said when the connection was established, I need an immediate meeting with the Senior Council. What I have discovered about the humans cannot wait. High Counselor Jethvar was old even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had served on the council for over 1,000 years and had seen many strange discoveries, but the tone in Velshan's voice worried him. "How serious is this matter?" he asked. "Sir," Velshan replied, "I believe we have a situation comparable to the discovery of Forerunner ruins, possibly more significant." Within hours, an emergency session was called. Only the eldest representatives were invited, those whose species had existed during the time of the Forerunners. The meeting was held in the deepest chamber of the council complex, protected by shields that could withstand star-killer weapons. Dr. Amy Foster noticed the change immediately. When she arrived at her laboratory that morning, 2 security guards were stationed outside. They were polite but firm. No one could enter without special authorization. "I'm sorry, Dr. Foster," one guard said. "New security protocols. We'll have your access restored soon." Amy found Jake and Ben in the embassy's main room, both looking confused and worried. "They've canceled all my meetings," Jake said. "Every single appointment for the next week. No explanation." Ben nodded. "Same here. I was supposed to give a presentation on human art today, but they said it was postponed indefinitely." "Something's wrong," Amy said. "They've sealed my lab and won't tell me why." The 3 humans spent the day trying to contact council officials, but everyone was suddenly too busy to meet with them. Even the friendly administrative robots gave only polite responses about temporary security adjustments. In the deep chamber, High Counselor Jethvar addressed the emergency assembly. 12 species were represented, the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Some had existed when the Forerunners still walked among the stars. "Fellow counselors," Jethvar began, "Dr. Velshan has made a discovery that changes everything we thought we knew about our new human members." Velshan stood and activated a holographic display showing human genetic sequences. To most species, the patterns would look like meaningless biological data. But to these ancient civilizations, the patterns were unmistakable. "The humans carry Forerunner genetic modifications," she announced. "Not just similar patterns, but exact matches to quantum-encoded sequences found in Forerunner bioarchives." The chamber erupted in clicking, humming, and chittering as different species expressed shock in their own ways. Ambassador Thys of the Reptilian Dominion was the first to speak. "This is impossible. The Forerunners vanished 50,000 years ago. How could a primitive species carry their genetic work?" "There's more," Velshan continued. "These modifications are not random. They form a coherent pattern designed to activate under specific conditions. The humans are not just carrying Forerunner genetics, they are designed to be carriers." Archivist Kethran was called to present her research. Her findings about the stellar data and the ancient project markers painted a picture that made the assembled counselors increasingly uncomfortable. "Project Sanctuary was real," she reported. "The Forerunners used the Sol system as a genetic repository. Based on the quantum signatures and timeline analysis, they modified primitive human ancestors before they disappeared." Counselor Zephron, of the Ancient Builders, a species so old they remembered when galaxies were young, spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "We all know why the Forerunners vanished. They discovered something that made them abandon physical existence. If they prepared the humans as carriers, what were they meant to carry?" The question hung in the air like a threat. Dr. Ben Cooper was getting frustrated. He had been trying to access the Council's cultural databases to continue his research, but every terminal he tried gave him error messages. When he asked for help, the staff said there were technical difficulties. That evening, he decided to take a walk through the embassy district to clear his head. As he walked past a fountain where alien children had been playing the day before, he noticed the area was empty. In fact, the entire district seemed unusually quiet. What Ben did not know was that Council security had quietly evacuated the area around the human embassy. The 3 humans were now effectively under quarantine, though no one had told them directly. As Ben stood by the fountain, he experienced something strange. The patterns in the water seemed to shift and dance in ways that made mathematical sense. He found himself understanding the flow dynamics not just intellectually, but in a deeper way that felt like remembering something he had forgotten. The feeling passed quickly, but it left him unsettled. He had never been particularly good at mathematics, yet for a moment, he had understood complex fluid dynamics as easily as reading a children's book. Meanwhile, Dr. Amy Foster was experiencing her own strange moment. Locked out of her laboratory, she sat in her quarters reviewing the biological data she had collected from council species. As she looked at the genetic information, patterns began to emerge that she had never noticed before. The relationships between different species became clear in a way that seemed to bypass normal scientific analysis. She could see evolutionary connections spanning millions of years, understand how life had spread across the galaxy, and perceive the underlying unity that connected all living things. Like Ben, the experience was brief, but profound. When it ended, she was left with questions she could not answer and knowledge she should not possess. In the council chamber, the debate continued through the night. Some members wanted the humans immediately contained and studied. Others argued that the Forerunners' plan, whatever it was, should be allowed to proceed. "The activation process has begun," reported Catherine. "Ancient monitoring systems throughout the galaxy are detecting the signatures. Every time the humans interact with our databases, attend our meetings, or share their culture, they broadcast recognition codes that Forerunner technology is programmed to respond to." High Counselor Jethvar asked the question everyone was thinking, "How much time do we have?" "Unknown," replied Dr. Velshan. "The process could take days, years, or decades, but based on the quantum patterns, it is already irreversible." As dawn broke over Nexus Prime, Jake Harrison woke to find that the view from his window had changed. Where he had once been able to see the busy streets and parks of the Embassy District, he now saw only the walls of nearby buildings. During the night, privacy shields had been erected around the human embassy. The three humans were no longer guests of the Galactic Council. They were the subjects of the most important and dangerous scientific investigation in galactic history. None of them yet understood what they were becoming, but deep in their genetic code, ancient programming was stirring to life. The Forerunners had planned for this moment 50,000 years ago, and their grand design was finally beginning to unfold. The cosmos held its breath as humanity took its first steps toward a destiny that would either save or doom every living thing in the galaxy. The sealed session of the High Council took place in a chamber that few beings in the galaxy knew existed. Located deep beneath Nexus Prime's surface, the room was surrounded by shields that could protect it from the explosion of a star. Ancient metal walls covered with symbols from dead civilizations surrounded a circular table where only the oldest species in the galaxy were permitted to sit. High Counselor Jethvar looked around the table at representatives whose civilizations had witnessed the rise and fall of entire galactic empires. Today they would discuss secrets that had been hidden for 50,000 years. "Fellow counselors," Jethvar began, "what we discuss here today must never leave this chamber. The information we are about to review could cause panic across the galaxy or worse." He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. Ancient documents appeared, written in languages so old that only a few scholars in the galaxy could read them. These are the final records of the Forerunners, discovered in a vault on their homeworld's ruins. They have been sealed by unanimous council vote for 50 millennia. The documents told a story that made even these ancient beings uncomfortable. The Forerunners had not been destroyed by war or disaster. They had transcended physical existence voluntarily, leaving behind their bodies and becoming something beyond normal understanding. But they had not left by choice. The Forerunners discovered something in the deep spaces between galaxies, Jethvar continued. Something that threatened not just their civilization, but the concept of life itself. They called it the Void Hunger. Ambassador Zakthul of the Void Watchers, whose species was among the oldest in the galaxy, spoke in a voice filled with ancient dread. "My people remember the signs from that time. Stars that went dark not from age, but from something that consumed their light. Planets that became empty not from destruction, but from the removal of everything that made them real." The holographic display showed images from the deepest space, areas where galaxies should exist but where only darkness remained. These were not normal black holes or empty space. They were regions where reality itself had been consumed. The Forerunners realized that conventional technology, no matter how advanced, could not fight this threat, Jethvar explained. Physical laws meant nothing to the void hunger. Energy weapons fed it. Matter only gave it more substance to devour. Dr. Velshan's medical data appeared in the display, showing the human genetic modifications in detail. The humans were the Forerunners' final project, she reported. Not a weapon, but a bridge. They were designed to exist in both physical reality and transcendent states simultaneously. They could fight an enemy that existed beyond normal space and time. Counselor Thys leaned forward, her reptilian eyes reflecting the holographic light. You are saying the humans are living weapons? Not weapons, corrected Archivist Kethron. Guardians. The genetic modifications don't grant destructive power. They grant the ability to perceive and interact with reality on multiple levels. The humans can touch the transcendent realm without losing their connection to physical existence. High Counselor Jethvar activated another section of the display. The Forerunners' plan was elegant and desperate. They would transcend to fight the void hunger directly, but they needed anchors in the physical realm. The humans were designed to be those anchors, capable of channeling transcendent power while remaining fundamentally grounded in reality. As the council debated in their hidden chamber, Dr. Ben Cooper was experiencing another strange episode. He sat in the embassy's small library, reading a book about galactic history when the words on the page began to shift and change. The text remained the same, but Ben suddenly understood connections between historical events that spanned millions of years. He could see patterns in the rise and fall of civilizations, understand how species evolved not just biologically but culturally and spiritually. Most disturbing of all, he began to perceive gaps in the historical record. Important events that had been forgotten or deliberately hidden. The deeper he looked, the more he realized that galactic history was incomplete, as if entire chapters had been removed. Dr. Amy Foster was having her own revelation. Confined to her quarters, she had been analyzing biological samples using a small portable scanner. As she worked, her understanding of life itself began to expand beyond normal scientific knowledge. She could perceive the quantum connections between all living things, see how consciousness flowed through biological systems, and understand how life force itself operated on levels that conventional science had never discovered. But along with this knowledge came a growing awareness of something wrong. There were dark spaces in the web of life, places where the connections were severed or corrupted. Something was eating away at the fabric of existence itself, leaving holes that grew larger over time. Jake Harrison experienced the most dramatic change. As Earth's chief diplomat, he had been trying to understand galactic politics and the complex relationships between different species. Suddenly, he could perceive not just the surface politics, but the deeper currents of fear and hope that drove entire civilizations. He realized that many of the galaxy's conflicts were not really about resources or territory. They were expressions of a deep, unspoken terror that something was coming for them all. Species fought each other because they sensed a greater threat, but could not identify or face it directly. In the council chamber, High Counselor Jethvar revealed the most classified information in galactic history. The void hunger is returning, he announced. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected the same signatures that appeared before the Forerunners' transcendence. Dead zones where reality becomes thin. Star systems that vanish not through destruction but through unbecoming. The assembled counselors absorbed this information in shocked silence. How long do we have? Asked Ambassador Zephron. Unknown. The expansion rate suggests decades, possibly centuries, but the pattern is accelerating. Archivist Kethron added her latest findings. The human activation process is responding to the cosmic threat. The more the void hunger spreads, the faster their genetic modifications awaken. The Forerunners designed them to respond automatically to this specific danger. Dr. Velshan presented her medical analysis. The humans are changing rapidly. Their neural activity has increased by 300% in the past week. Their genetic markers are activating in sequence, following patterns established 50,000 years ago. and they have no idea what is happening to them, observed Counselor Thys. High Counselor Jethvar made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. We must tell them the truth. The Forerunners' plan cannot succeed if the humans fight their own transformation. They need to understand what they are becoming and why. The vote was close, but the ancient counselors agreed. For the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy's greatest secret would be shared with others. As the meeting ended, emergency signals were sent to monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Ancient Forerunner technology that had been dormant for millennia began powering up in response to the approaching threat. On the edges of known space, automated systems detected the first signs of reality breakdown. Dark zones where physics no longer functioned properly. Regions where time moved differently and space folded in impossible ways. The void hunger was returning, and this time it was stronger. It had consumed entire galaxies in the dark spaces between civilizations, growing in power and hunger with each reality it devoured, but this time it would face opposition that existed on its own level. The humans were awakening to their true purpose, and the Forerunners' ancient plan was beginning to unfold. Jake, Amy, and Ben sat in their confined embassy, unaware that they were about to learn the truth about humanity's origin and destiny. In a few hours, they would discover that their species had been created for a purpose so important that the fate of all existence depended on their success. The cosmos held its breath as the final preparations began for a conflict that would determine whether life itself would continue to exist in the universe. Dr. Amy Foster woke up different. She opened her eyes in her small room at the human embassy and immediately knew that everything had changed during the night. The walls looked the same, the furniture was in the same places, but she could see more. Much more. Amy could perceive the quantum structure of everything around her. The metal walls were not solid barriers, but dancing patterns of energy. The air was alive with invisible connections linking every molecule to every other molecule. Most amazingly, she could sense the life force of every being on Nexus Prime, from the smallest bacteria to the largest council members. The knowledge did not overwhelm her. Instead, it felt like remembering something she had always known but forgotten. This was not Amy losing her humanity. This was Amy becoming more human than she had ever been before. She walked to her window and looked out at the shield walls that surrounded their embassy. Through the metal barriers, she could sense the fear and confusion of the council members beyond. They were terrified of what the humans were becoming, but they did not understand that the transformation was not about power. It was about connection. Jake Harrison experienced his awakening during a meeting with High Counselor Jethvar. The ancient leader had come to the embassy personally to explain the truth about humanity's origin and purpose. But as Jethvar began to speak, Jake found himself understanding far more than just words. He could perceive the emotional currents flowing through the council complex. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species, all connected by invisible threads of thought and feeling. Some threads were bright with hope, others dark with fear. But all of them led back to a central truth that Jake suddenly understood. The galaxy was dying. Not from war or disaster, but from something that consumed the very foundation of existence. And humanity had been created to heal the wounds that this cosmic predator left behind. "You feel it now," Jethvar said, watching Jake's expression change. "The Forerunners designed you to perceive what others cannot see." Dr. Ben Cooper's transformation happened while he was reading in the embassy library. The words on the page began to reveal layers of meaning that went far beyond their surface content. History became a living thing, showing him not just what had happened, but why it had happened and what it meant for the future. He could see the true pattern of galactic civilization, how species rose and fell, how they struggled against forces they could not understand, and how they all played parts in a story much larger than any of them realized. But most importantly, Ben could see the gaps, the places where something had been removed from reality itself. The void hunger had been feeding on existence for millions of years, taking not just matter and energy, but the possibility of matter and energy. It left behind spaces where nothing could ever exist again. The three humans met in the embassy's main room. Each changed but still fundamentally themselves. They did not need to explain what had happened to each other. They could sense it directly through connections that transcended normal communication. "We are the bridge," Amy said quietly, "between what is and what could be." Jake nodded. The Forerunners transcended physical existence to fight this thing, but they needed anchors in reality to maintain the connection. "And we are those anchors," Ben concluded. "But we are also more than that. We can do things they could not do." High Counselor Jethvar and his advisors watched through hidden cameras as the humans discussed their transformation. What they saw was not frightening but hopeful. The humans had not become alien or inhuman. They had become more essentially human than ever before. Dr. Velshan monitored their biological signs and reported to the emergency council session. Their neural activity has stabilized at levels that should be impossible for organic brains to sustain. But they show no signs of stress or deterioration. If anything, they appear healthier than before. Archivist Kethran added her analysis. Ancient monitoring systems throughout the galaxy are responding to their transformation. Forerunner technology that has been dormant for 50,000 years is coming online. As the day progressed, reports began arriving from across the galaxy. Humans on Earth and in the small colonies humanity had established were experiencing similar awakenings. Not all at once, but in a growing wave that spread from person to person through connections that transcended space and time. More importantly, the awakened humans were beginning to have an effect on their surroundings. On Earth, scientists reported that certain astronomical phenomena were behaving differently. Dark matter readings were changing in ways that suggested the fundamental structure of space-time was being healed. Amy Foster addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Council via holographic link. She spoke calmly, her voice carrying an authority that made even the oldest species listen. "We understand what we are now," she said. "The Forerunners created us to be guardians, but not in the way you might think. We are not warriors who fight with weapons. We are healers who repair the damage that the void hunger leaves behind." The council chamber was silent as she continued. "The void hunger feeds on separation. It grows stronger when beings are isolated from each other, when species fight among themselves, when individuals lose connection to the larger web of existence. Our purpose is to restore those connections." Jake Harrison joined the communication. The Forerunners transcended because they had to fight the void hunger on its own level, but transcendence alone was not enough. They needed beings who could remain connected to physical reality while also accessing transcendent realms. Ben Cooper completed their explanation. "We are the link between what the Forerunners became and what the galaxy still is. Through us, their transcendent power can flow back into normal reality, to heal the wounds and strengthen the connections that hold existence together." High Counselor Jethvar asked the question that everyone was thinking. "What do you need from us?" Amy's answer surprised them all. "Nothing. The process has already begun. Every interaction we have had with Council species, every cultural exchange, every moment of cooperation, has strengthened the web of connection. The healing is happening naturally. Over the following days, the effects became visible. Long-standing conflicts between species began to resolve as beings found themselves more aware of their shared connections. Ancient grudges seemed less important when viewed from the perspective of cosmic unity. Most remarkably, the dead zones at the galaxy's edge stopped expanding. For the first time in millions of years, the void hunger's advance had been halted, but the humans knew this was only the beginning. The cosmic predator was vast and ancient, and it would not be deterred by one small victory. The real battle would take place on levels of existence that most beings could not even imagine. Amy, Jake, and Ben stood together on the observation deck of Nexus Prime, looking out at the stars. They could see the galaxy not just as points of light, but as a living network of connections. Some areas were bright with healthy energy. Others were dim or damaged. "It will take time," Amy said. "Generations, maybe centuries." "But it can be done," Jake replied. "The connections are already stronger than they were." Ben smiled. "And we are not alone. More humans are awakening every day, and other species are beginning to understand their own roles in the larger pattern. Throughout the galaxy, ancient Forerunner installations powered up for the first time in 50,000 years. Not weapons or defenses, but healing stations designed to repair the fabric of reality itself. The transcended Forerunners flowed through these systems, guided by their human anchors back into the physical realm. The void hunger sensed the change and began to respond. In the dark spaces between galaxies, something vast and hungry stirred to greater activity. The cosmic battle was beginning in earnest. But for the first time since the Forerunners' disappearance, reality had defenders who could fight on equal terms. Humanity had awakened to its true purpose, and the galaxy discovered that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from the most powerful or the most advanced, but from those who remember how to hope when hope seems impossible. The cosmos no longer held its breath in fear. Instead, it breathed deeply with anticipation of what the future might bring. The universe had guardians again, and they carried within them the power to ensure that life, consciousness, and connection would continue to exist no matter what forces tried to destroy them. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy had reason to believe in tomorrow.